Bellator Light Heavyweight Champion Vadim Nemkov returns to the octagon against the equally dangerous Yoel Romero after winning the Grand Prix, where he defeated Corey Anderson in the finals by decision. The bout will take place at Bellator 297 in the light heavyweight division. Hello fighters. This is the world of MMA. In this video I will give a prediction on the fight between Vadim Nemkov and Yoel Romero. But before we start this video, do not forget to subscribe to the channel and like it, so you will not miss future videos. Here we go. As I said above, Vadim defeated Anderson in the finals and took $1 million, as well as 2 titles. The first undisputed, and the second Grand Prix winner. But it took him a long time to achieve all this. First, he was matched up against Phil Davis. But Vadim showed that they were at different levels. Next up should have been Anthony Johnson, but due to serious health problems he had to withdraw. And he was replaced by Julius Anglickas, who was also stopped by Nemkov and ended up in the finals against the recently signed UFC fighter Corey Anderson. In the first fight, let's be honest, Vadim was on the verge of defeat. But because of an unintentional head punch by the American, Nemkov had a deep cut, and subsequently the doctor forbade him to go any further. So the Grand Prix was not over. After this fight, all the fans and Corey himself began to claim that Vadim was very weak and that Anderson would destroy him in his next fight. However, he couldn't live up to his words. Nemkov took every round, leaving him no chance to win. Now we are looking forward to the next fight between Vadim Nemkov and Yoel Romero. This fight will take place on June 17th in the main event of Bellator 297, and right now let's break down and come to a conclusion as to who will leave the octagon with the belt around his waist. Let's go. Let's start with the champion's striking, because I have a lot to say about it. Vadim has no problem becoming UFC champion. Of all the leagues, he is one of the smartest punchers in the light heavyweight division. No one can find the key to Vadim's striking technique. He works perfectly on his hands. His counterpunches, jabs, and hooks are dangerous to anyone who meets him. Besides his hands, Nemkov also has a good stretching of his legs. He is especially fond of punching low kicks. More than once Vadim made his opponents fall on their heels with this punch. In my opinion, in the fight against Yoel, it is the low kick that will play the decisive role. If, like against Adesanya, Romero stays like a stone, Vadim can take the legs off the Cuban. If he's standing like a tree and doesn't move, it's going to be a nightmare for him in the form of low kicks. After low kicks, Romero understands that he doesn't have to show off and wants to have a serious fight. So now let's move on to Romero's punching style. What can I say? The man is 46 years old, and he still fights at a high level. It's kind of crazy. Still, right now his style is undergoing tremendous changes. In his peak years he was much more explosive, faster than his opponents, and now he's slow. But it's still a good punch he's got. If he hits it, it's over. If you look at Yoel in his fight against Israel Adesanya, you can see that the more experienced puncher would leave him no chance in the counter. So he waited for Adesanya to go at him, to meet the champion with a whipping, hard punch. The whole fight Adesanya was shooting the Cuban at range, not giving him any chance to succeed, and in the end Yoel lost. Many fans were not happy after that fight. I understand the spectacle wasn't there, but I have a feeling the same will happen in this fight. With elite punchers, Yoel often likes to use this move. Vadim Nemkov is undoubtedly going to be the favorite in this aspect. He's going to outgun the Cuban due to his mind and his arsenal without any limited punches. So now we move on to wrestling. Vadim has a wrestling base. And when necessary, he can easily move you to the ground floor. In the fight against Romero, I don't see the need for a transfer. Last fight against Corey Anderson showed us that Vadim has no trouble defending against attempts to move the fight to the canvas. 15 attempts and none of them were successful. Nemkov blocked all of them. But you can't say that in his first fight against Anderson. Vadim obviously underestimated the wrestling of the American. He paid the price, and when he realized that it is better to take each aspect of the fight as seriously as possible, he showed us that he was the best light heavyweight, at least for now. Vadim works well on the ground, i.e. control, pain and ground pound. Now moving on to Yoel's wrestling background. The Cuban rarely uses his wrestling. And that's too bad, considering what kind of base he has. He could take on the UFC's top fighters without any problems. Same with Costa, instead of chopping he could have been a smarter fighter. Also in Bellator he continues to show stand-up fights. But still the favorite here I think would be Yoel Romero, who has tremendous experience in wrestling. Now to the next aspect that needs to be discussed. Yoel Romero's cardio has always left big questions. He seemed to go 5 rounds with Adesanya. But you saw for yourself what those 5 rounds were. Yoel is not a small fighter. Look at his bulk. Not every fighter has that much muscle and power, and it's the looks of the Cuban that get him down. If he starts to fight like he did against Paulo Costa, then his cardio sags in the second round. But it cannot be said about Vadim. No matter how many fights he has to fight in 5 rounds, his endurance is always at a high level. No one has ever made Vadim exhausted yet. So, I'll choose Vadim Nemkov as a stamina favorite. In terms of experience, Vadim is very good. He has fought many top fighters. With the former UFC champion Yuri Prochazka and the title challenger Magomed Ankalaev, Bellator has beaten fighters like Phil Davis, Philip Lins, Corey Anderson and heavyweight champion Ryan Bader. Moving on to Yoel Romero, even though he started his fight career late, he has fought many top fighters and UFC champs. For example, I can mention his fights against Robert Whittaker, Luke Rockhold, Chris Weidman, Israel Adesanya, etc. In this aspect I will put equality, as both fighters have had many fights and with top fighters. I think this fight will follow the Yoel Romero vs Israel Adesanya scenario. Romero will go slow and wait for the right moment for the knockout, while Vadim will outshoot him in his arms, keep the Cuban at a distance and hit hard low kicks. Thus will win by decision of the judges, as knocking out the Cuban is one of the toughest tasks for all fighters. And that, my friends, is the end of the video. Write in your comments about who will win this fight. Goodbye everyone.